Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Sorry we were a little bit late. We were having technical issues, but we were only a minute late, so we are here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the virtual plant clinic. I am Lilly Browning. I am the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator at Hernando County Utilities, and I partner with Hernando County Extension Office. And joining me today is everybody's favorite horticultural, world-renowned horticultural expert, Bernard Bathauer. Welcome, Bernie.
Boy, I am believing that's in an introduction like that. There's no way I can live up to it, and especially since it's not true, folks.
Dr. Lester is joining us amongst the listeners. So, yes, good morning, Dr. Lester. He is not working officially this week. He had a family situation that requires his participation. So I said, that's all right, Bill. We can handle it. We got Bernie. I mean, what more do you need? The other person that I invited to participate with us, Dr. Lester, she was able to get in on a class that she had been trying to do before, so she's not available either. But good morning, buddy. Welcome, everybody. If you have any questions, now is the day to save them for the really, really hard questions, because we have Bernie here. Plus, like Dr. Lester is kind of hovering in the background, and Teresa always is, so we can get some questions answered. Good morning, Bassem. Welcome, everybody. We have Neil here this morning. Welcome. When I came in this morning trying to get set up, Bernie already had a in-person person come to the actual in-person plant clinic. And what kind of questions was she asking you, Bernie?
Well, she was wanting to grow pecan trees. She has one tree and it doesn't seem to be doing anything yet. Well, pecan trees unfortunately take two trees, an A tree and a B tree, so that one acts as a male during parts of the day and the other acts as a female. And if the trees are not in sync so that the male and female occurs at the same time, you don't get any fertilization, you don't get any nuts. So
they only at certain part of the days to no go into that again. That just lost me there.
Well, say that the A tree, and I don't know which is which, but the A tree comes up in the morning as a male and produces pollen. You have to have a B tree that is receptive to the pollen during the morning. And I believe that later in the day, the A tree switch to female and the B tree switch to male, and everything is happy. You get plenty of nuts. And the pecans use a tremendous amount of zinc. In our soils, which run pH around 6.7, 6.5, someplace in there, zinc deficiency is a problem. You have to add zinc to keep the trees productive. And this is about the southern limit,
I would say,
on where you can grow pecans.
It really is, yes.
The soils here are really not conducive to it, but it can be done. And the trees,
you get about 10 years out of a pecan tree, maybe?
Maybe a little more than that. They don't produce for the first 7 to 10, maybe 12 years. So it takes a while for the trees to grow up. One thing they do here is they really attract tent caterpillars. So if you have a pecan tree, expect that you're going to have a lot of tent caterpillars. And I love it because the northerners, for some reason, think that all you have to do to get rid of tent caterpillars is set them on fire. and they usually end up burning the trees down. So
hopefully it's only the tree that they burn down. Well, the northerners also, we say that like we are not
We're
amongst the
transplants.
Northerners. They also believe every kind of tent caterpillar that they see is a gypsy moth.
They're not.
I don't think we have gypsy moths here, do
Oh,
we?
no.
And tent caterpillars are not to freak out about like the gypsy moths. They're going to make your tree look ugly, but if it's a grown tree, it's just really going to give it a haircut and it'll come out of it okay, usually.
Actually, they almost hurt nothing. It takes about probably 10 to 15% of the tree out of production. But unless you actually have a producing grove of pecan trees, other than the fact that they look kind of hokey, it doesn't hurt anything.
And please don't set your trees on fire.
Yeah, don't burn them out. That really is the wrong way to go.
Neil is telling us that they are going to launch a community garden on Cobblestone Drive near County Line Road. So that's very interesting. Are you using raised beds, Neil, there? Because I mean, it could be, but I don't foresee that area as being like very even fertile kind of soil. It's interesting. I would like to hear more about that and who is sponsoring that. I know there is also oh yes, they are using raised beds. There's a community garden on closer to 19, actually behind the Steak and Shake, at a center called Well, Well, Come, C-O-N-E, Home. And I know that center, they do a lot of different things and they have community gardens as well. I would love for you to send us photos. So, somewhere we have our emails. I don't know how Bill does that. He's got, oh, banners. Okay. Let's see.
We have Teresa's camera, so she's not in a position to jump in and give us things right now. Maybe
since last week. Well, no, she doesn't need the camera to jump in. In fact, she avoids the camera. Since last week, every 3 seconds, Dr. Lester was showing my email, which you are certainly welcome to send me. I'd love to see the community garden pictures, but I bet you Dr. Lester, there's his email, would also like to see anything like that. The lady who was in here also was talking about starting transplants. Her transplants die in the tray, she was saying.
she was overwatering. That seems to be a real problem with a lot of plants. They do not take overwatering. You should be able to stick your finger down in the soil and it should not feel wet. Shouldn't be dry, shouldn't be powdery, but it shouldn't be wet. It takes a little while. This part of the experience of developing a green thumb is to learn to stick a finger into the soil and see what the moisture level is. But almost all plants, if you give them wet feed, especially when they're young, they don't survive it. People don't understand the root structure actually breathes oxygen. And if you have everything covered with water, there is no oxygen available, and it just kills the plant.
So if you put your finger in and you come up with zero dirt on your finger, it's too dry.
Mm-hmm.
If you have it kind of just stuck there, it's just right.
That's good.
Yeah. Neil says that community garden is by Calvary Church on their property, and he has a few tray tops that popped off, but are overall doing well. Very good. Yes. Yeah, where that's located, not to have Monique, if she's on, accuse me again of sounding like this guy over here, but County Line Road is an unrecognizable territory. I don't know what's going on there. I grew up in Massarik Town, lived there ages 11 through 18. I still have family living there to this day. I should know, Miss Arktown, I should know County Line Road. The last time I got off on County Line Road, off of the parkway, I got lost.
It has changed.
I didn't get lost, but I wasn't where I thought I would be because I did not follow the signs. I got off and turned east, and it said turn right to go to County Line Road. I'm like, no, I'm on County Line Road, and then I ended up on that new Ayers Road extension. So that just goes, I remember County Line Road wasn't paved all the way through because Hernando and Pascal were in litigation of who should finish. So right around Cobblestone, it was not paved. Now it's a metropolitan area, so the more gardens and other things we put there, you know.
That part of the county has a lot of sugar sand areas. And one thing that people don't realize about sugar sand is the reason it's sugar sand is that it's devoid of basically everything. Has no organic material, and just adding organic material helps tremendously. The more you add, the better. But the other thing it doesn't have is there's no microbial action. And the thing that makes nutrients available to the plant is the microbial action. So if you have sterile soil like sugar sand, just adding the nutrients is not going to make it really all that good unless you also add organic material and the microbes. Right. And they actually sell microbes. So it's one of those things that...
Well, though, but there are things that grow in the sugar sand. I mean, we're talking about trying to grow vegetables. That's a whole different thing. I mean, people say nothing grows in Florida. I mean, look out your window. Is it Arizona? Is it West Texas? No, we have trees, grasses, lots of things are growing in that native soil.
Well, the thing that it's like a tree growing in Brooklyn. If it's so rare to have a tree grow in New York that they write a book about it, you can understand that plants can grow just about anywhere.
I read that book.
Did you see about the?
Didn't have a lot to do with the tree.
The moon soil. The University of Florida acquired some of the moon soil, and they grew some plants. Mm-hmm. And the plants didn't do very well.
Weird.
And the reason the plants didn't do very well is although the analysis of the soil wasn't too bad, there was no microbial action whatsoever. Okay. And none of the nutrients were really available to the plant. So there is a point showing that you really do have to have these things. That would be a real problem if you tried to grow things on the moon. You put in a big greenhouse, the soil itself, although it has all the nutrients, has no ability to provide them to the plants. So these poor guys that are living up there in this wonderful world that we're going to produce on the moon are going to starve.
No, you'll have to bring the microbials up there.
Oh. Are we allowed to move life from planet to planet?
Well, I don't know all the details yet, but you know what I do know is that apparently listed somewhere in the Hanna-Barbera world, George Jetson's birth date is July 30th, 2022. Somebody just gave birth to George Jetson. So it is very possible then that, in his lifetime, this will happen. Neil's saying they built out beds with good soil, sphagnum peat moss, composted manure, broad spectrum biological soil inoculant. Ooh, that's a good word.
And organic fertilizer. That was done by somebody that had a pretty good idea what they were doing. That is exactly right. Mm-hmm.
But that is for growing vegetables. That doesn't mean you can't grow ornamentals. I mean, all of us do, in our yards. What I find more difficult than our native soil is the non-native, well, it's native, but it's from way, way deep down, the what we call fill dirt. I heard another word for it this week. I'm trying to remember, and it was more accurate. It was a better word that somebody was using on a site, someone from, another state. And I think it was something like deep soil or something, they were referring to the fill dirt that we use. And where do they normally get that? They come and do a lot. They clear it, kill everything. And then you gotta build the house up, for code reasons. And so they bring in fill dirt. If they're building an entire community, a lot of times they'll bring that fill dirt locally from where they have built a drainage retention area. Or they have, they go someplace and get it from, where there has been a lot of digging. So Florida's topsoil is about how deep?
About 6 inches.
If we're lucky. So they're getting this soil local if you're really lucky, but not always, and it's kind of that orangey color, and they throw it down. Well, they're getting it from so deep in the ground, it is what has zero anything. And so then they finish the house, they throw in some stock landscape plants and throw in a carpet of turf and say, grow.
The thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that no matter how all these things are done, if the pH is wrong for the plant that you want, you're still not going to be successful. There's a housing addition behind Lowe's. I don't remember the name of it.
In Brooksville?
In Brooksville.
Seagate.
Yes, that's it. And it's an area.
It's very far from the sea. Like
25
miles.
It was a swamp that they filled, and they filled with basically crushed limestone. They said it's soil, but the pH is over 8, and there's very few things that are going to be happy there. You plant grass.
That's interesting that it's that high, that far inland.
So you put in, well, it was, there's 3 feet of 8 pH soil. So you put down Bahia, and the Bahia lasts a year, and you have to put down another crop of Bahia. And
because Bahia does not deal well with high pH.
And the big thing now is people want native plants, which is wonderful. But the thing about it is all the commercial plants, we have the nutrient requirements and the pH requirements are available on just about anything you want to grow until you get to the native plants. And unfortunately, we haven't done the research. So a lot of these things that you see growing maybe in an area that's got sugar sand will only grow in a pH of 7.5 or higher, and you move them into a home landscape where you're at 6, and they fade off really quick, and they don't just keel over and die, but
they try.
But they slowly lose their vigor, and the plants just kind of go away, and you never notice that all the things that you planted were never happy. I found out a long time ago that if you plant something and it doesn't look happy after 30 days, it's in the wrong place. And I spent a lot of money, wasted a lot of money planting things that wouldn't grow. And I found that if they weren't happy after 30 days, I'd dig them up and put them in a totally different environment in the property. And a lot of times they would perk up. Well, nobody tells you when you buy a plant, this plant is not going to be happy at a high pH or a low pH, because they figure you're not smart enough to know what a pH is. And whatever it is, I don't know, but really it refers to
what is pH? You do know what it is. You're smart. You're a chemist.
It refers to
all things.
The free hydrogen ions percentage wise. So at the pH of 7, you have as many hydrogen and hydroxyl ions.
It's neutral.
And it's neutral. And as you go towards the acid scale, at 0, you're nothing but hydrogen ions, and that 14 you're nothing but hydroxyl ions.
And it also, whether you go away, lower from that neutral point or higher, different nutrients become available or not available.
They do.
Yeah.
So I don't. Well, we've got a chart, and normally I look at the
That's
chart.
what I'm seeing in my head is that chart.
But let's say that iron is less available if the pH is lower than 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that magnesium is more available if the pH is higher than 6. Well, if you have a pH of 5.5, you don't want to plant something that needs a lot of iron because iron's not going to be available to the plant. On the other hand, magnesium might be readily available in a plant that needs a lot of magnesium at that high pH would just do wonderful. So there again, you can do a soil test. The university will check the soil that you got for for $10. They send you back what your pH is, how much of each nutrient's available, what it would take for fertilizer to make everything really happy for a particular plant. So you specify the plant, they tell you exactly what you need. And if you're planting expensive things, it makes good sense. I can't imagine spending $10,000 for a palm tree and not doing a little basic research to find out if I should plant that palm tree there. And yet, people do it.
Sure, because they're in Florida, they should be able to grow palms.
Yeah, so the first frost comes along, this was a bad palm tree, the tree dies just under frost. Or maybe it's never going to be healthy because it's entirely wrong pH. Or maybe there's not enough potassium in the soil for that. So are you going to constantly amend it? You need to know those things before you make the commitment. Now, if you're buying a $10 plant, plant it. If it isn't happy, move it. And if it isn't happy, throw it away and get something else.
Yeah. And when he's talking about getting a soil test, you can go to your extension office, wherever that is in your county, and request a soil test. And you will get a form. Sometimes they have the little baggies for you. They don't seem to be giving those out as much. But what you'll do is you'll go home and you'll get like a composite of soil, little bits from all over. You want to dry it out a little bit first. Mm-hmm. And then you will package it up and send it to the soils lab in Gainesville at the University of Florida. And you'll say, I'm trying to grow vegetable garden. I'm trying to grow palm tree. I'm trying to grow turf, whatever it is that they are searching for. And they will email you your results. They will also email Dr. Lester or whomever your extension agent is in your county, those exact, a copy of your results. So that when you look it over and you're like, what? You can call and Dr. Lester will go over it with you, or even this guy right here. If you call
I love to go over the things. I had one woman that was complaining about the Bahia grass, and the pH was 8.4.
Yeah,
I mean, basically, it was nothing but limestone, and there's just no possible way to grow Bahia there. And I said, you need to do something else because this grass will never grow there. I mean, this is the worst possible soil you could have. She left here and went and bought another house.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
On her way home, she stopped at another subdivision and bought a home.
That is the biggest influence you've ever had on it. Wow. Just because their soil pH was high. I think there must have been other issues in the back of her mind. Neil asks, is there a fee for soil testing? I believe it's $10.
$10 a sample.
A sample. And that answers a lot of questions. Oh, look, here's our magic person in the background giving us all of this information. You can even go online and print out the form yourself and send it in, but it will always go back to your extension office, so you can call them to get the the understanding. Good morning, Lee. Thank you for joining us. So yes, soil tests are always great to have. Do they test for nitrogen?
No, they do not
Why?
test for nitrogen.
Why?
Nitrogen is something that you cannot do an accurate test for. I mean, obviously, nitrogen is 80% of the atmosphere, and it's only accessible to the plants in a particular form.
Depositional nitrogen. That's what's in the atmosphere, right?
So
I finally got that word right.
if you only checked for nitrogen, you would get a totally erroneous number. So they use a system where they feed the sample into a plasma. They look at the spectrum off the plasma.
We went there years ago.
Yes, we did.
Yes, I'm remembering that now.
The spectrum tells them.
Remember the guy who fainted?
What the elements are, and the intensity, the brightness of each color tells them how much is there. It's amazing. They run some calibration samples every so often, make sure that it's still calibrated, and they've got a couple of people that just sit there, and this little machine has these samples moving through, and prints up a form, and somebody looks at the form and says, for this crop, they need these recommendations, and they put the right recommendations with it and email it back to you. It's really great.
So yeah, and nitrogen moves so quickly through the soil. I compare it to gold. The strain is there one day and moved to the next day. So Neil, with his raised beds and all that great stuff he had in it, he's asking, as we go season to season, or how often should they test?
If you're doing vegetables, I would do it every 2 years.
Okay.
If you're doing it for lawn or landscaping purposes, I would do it when you were going to make major changes. The first time before you spend the money, and then as you make big expensive changes, do it again. But for the most part, the landscaping soil does not change very much. When you're growing vegetables, you're taking a tremendous amount of material out of the soil.
Yes,
and
it's very stressed.
So you need a more frequent. There would be some things that you could probably check every year. If you were doing pumpkins or something where there was going to be really big things leaving, I'd do it on an annual basis. You know, farmers do that. You go out and with the new equipment they've got, they get the yield per acre numbers for every spot in the field. Well, if they have an area that's a little low, they'll do soil tests every year on that to find out what they need to get it back up. And then when they put the fertilizer down, the machine figures out where these weak spots were and puts down an appropriate amount of fertilizer to offset it. And so they're constantly adjusting.
We can't afford that for our lawns.
Well, we do. If you do a soil test and it says that you're really short on something, then you're going to have to add that. And they give you a recommendation. They tell you what you should be doing.
Do they test for contaminants?
No. Contaminant tests. If you have one of those situations where a plant died and you think it's that sneaky neighbor of yours came over and sprayed it with something.
We have not heard this story, have we?
Not since 2 o'clock yesterday. But anyway, when you want to know if there's something in it, those take special tests. Those tests have to be run in a lab that's going to charge you an arm and a leg. Figure $3,000 to find out if it was a chemical that actually killed your plant. And the reason is that they don't do a simple test. You have to run some pre-tests, and you get a spectrum, and then somebody that really knows their chemistry looks at it and says, it could be one of these things. And then they run it against samples of known things till they find a dead hit. So,
Yeah,
you know,
so the cheaper venture would be if you are suspecting your neighbor of sabotaging your yard, cameras are a lot cheaper than those private labs. Let's see here. We have a question. My bay laurel stopped growing. Can you tell me what is the problem? Thanks. The SEMU are here in Hernando County. I think he's here. I don't know. Do you know?
Does it have any symptoms other than it's just not getting taller, or did the leaves turn brown, turn red?
Okay, you'll have to get back with that.
We need to know that.
And back to the soil question. Neil said in Canada they would use clover as a cover crop. Unfortunately, that's impossible to do in Florida. No, it's not.
Actually, that's not true. You
We
can
have
grow
cover
white
crops.
clover
Yeah.
cover crop if you want.
And that's not the only cover crop.
But
They use alfalfa, don't they?
Mhm.
You can even use ryegrass in the winter.
Yeah.
We do have cover crops you can use.
The thing about it is, it doesn't replenish the nutrients other than nitrogen.
Right. Because they fix the nitrogen.
Yeah, it's nitrogen fixation, but it is not good for anything but nitrogen. So really doesn't do you much good. If you think about it, the plant takes all these nutrients to grow. When you plow it back in, all you've done is put the same things back.
Yeah.
But it did fix nitrogen in its root structure. The legumes do that.
But also what it does is when you're planting any kind of vegetable or edible plant, the cover crops also help confuse the pests. You have something different there. So this buffet isn't serving what it did before. So we'll move along. And also, rotate. It's crop rotation, basically.
The thing that happens with a cover crop in Florida that's really important to keep cover crops on is that the loss of organic material is unbelievably high in Florida. The organic material is gone in the top 6 inches of soil, usually in about 18 months.
Does that go back to, we've talked about this, people, I know some of them are my children, who have left Florida to live somewhere else, and they come back and they insist Florida has a very specific smell. Not a bad smell, but it smells like Florida.
It has a little sulfur smell to it. That's true. If you're away from the state long enough, when you come back, you can tell that.
I wondered if it's also, the rotting vegetation and with all mixed in with that salter, probably.
That's more a thing of the swamps.
Okay.
But if you keep a cover crop on, it lowers the temperature of the soil. It keeps the sun from burning up the organic material that is there, and it provides some organic material to put back in the soil. The reason you need organic material in the soil is that the normal grains, other than clay in the soil, do not hold nutrients. Clay particles are very small and they're electrically active, and they latch on to the nutrients.
Yes,
the organic material
exchange, is that
cation
exchange.
So the
that's not marbles.
No.
Okay.
So I lost my point. Oh well. Anyway, when we have this material, it hangs on to the nutrients, keeps the nutrients from flushing through the soil quite as fast. And boy, is it fast here. I mean, the reason that sugar sand is sugar sand is that we've constantly kept all the nutrients out of it. If you could get a real good cover crop on it of anything, in a few years, that would lose the sugar sand capabilities.
Yes.
But
the person who was in here this morning said that she went up to our landfill and got some of the mulch piles. She asked them get them from the bottom, so she had some good finds. And then she was devastated that all that good stuff was gone in a year and a half. Oh yeah,
You know,
it's going to be.
the absolute best thing you can put on soil to grow things is compost. The second best thing is a composting mulch. And pine bark is a wonderful mulch for Florida because it tends to slightly raise the pH. It tends to be a good mulch as far as cover, and it tends to disintegrate and show up as nutrients in the soil later on. So it's cheap, it's effective. You know, what more could you ask for? So pine bark's wonderful. The people that think, well, I'll go out and use rocks, and they put rocks around things. Well, rocks don't add anything to the soil. Rocks have a lousy pH. Rocks are just,
and they're going to disappear.
They're going to sink into the soil.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to do anything then because you can't. You know, you'd have to strain them out, and nobody's going to do that. And they tend to reflect a lot of heat onto whatever they're under.
You've got pizza oven beds.
So if you want to mulch things, mulch it with anything but rocks. I don't
cypress
care.
mulch. Don't use cypress.
Yeah, well, cypress mulch for political reasons, but you
can use environmental reasons.
That's it. I confuse those words sometimes. But you know, you could use torn up old bed sheets or something would be better than rocks. So.
Okay, but Sam is talking about his what was it? A bay laurel. It has stopped growing and giving new leaves, and he has noticed some scale on the leaves. How old is it also?
Let's see. If it's got scale, there's really nothing you do about scale on a tree that size. Has anything changed in the area? That really doesn't make much sense on.
Yes, ma'am. Come here. Let her come here. She will never show her face. She does. Oh, this is.
Yeah. This is the official word from the university.
Or from Teresa.
Yeah. It says you need to fertilize the tree. I'll be darned. It says that they use up all their nutrients, and if the leaves aren't yellowing, it's not nitrogen, but it's probably something else. It says it's easily cured by adding organic material around the root zone. And you may need to add peat moss to reduce soil pH and make manganese more available to the plant.
Here you go, Bassem. Email me, and I'll send
fertilize
you that information.
it and get a soil test, and then get back with us, and we'll tell you from there, because we're going to need some information.
What he just read, what our producer Teresa just gave us, email me. I'll be glad to send that information to you. And let's see, where were we? Neil read that Mexican sunflowers are good to add nutrition to the soil. What do you feel about that?
Plants do not add nutrition to the soil. The thing about it is, in order for it to add nutrients, it has to take the nutrients out of the soil first to put them back. So some plants are better to have growing than others, but to actually add the nutrition, that's not really true. They may make things easier to obtain, like the legumes making nitrogen available, and the Mexican sunflowers may be able to grow in soil that the minerals are locked up in, making them more available, but they're not adding actual nutrition to the soil. They're only making it more available.
And even compost doesn't add nutrition. What it does is it improves its nutrient holding capacity and the water holding capacity as well. Bill, Camillo has a question. He found Oleander Caterpillars today. Guess where he found them? On his oleander.
Really?
Is this something I need to take any action on? Let it be, or spray something.
Okay, the story on oleanders. If you want them to look nice, you'll spray them. If you spray them, you're committing to spraying them forever and ever and ever. Use any of the nasty insect sprays. They're all pretty effective.
No, use BT.
BT works. Any of the
Don't
things
use
are
the
effective.
nasty insect spray. Use BT as a caterpillar
The thing about it is,
control. But you'll get every caterpillar
if you have oleander caterpillars and you let them go, you'll lose a little bit of your plant this year. Next year, there'll be more oleander moths show up and lay more eggs, and you'll lose the entire plant. It'll grow back. Then 3 years or 4 years or 5 years from now, every time it puts out a leaf, there'll be something there to kill it. So if you want the oleanders to look nice, spray them. If you want the oleanders to be a low maintenance thing, let them go, and it's Russian roulette. They may not be a problem. They may be a serious problem.
And our producer, Teresa, says the moth is beautiful. And if you go to this link here, it is a polka dot wasp moth. It is not a wasp.
No, it's a moth.
Yeah.
But it's a gorgeous thing, and it's patriotic as it can be. It's red, white, and blue.
Yes.
You know, it makes you think of America when you see one. And it's just like all Americans. It just eats its way through everything it touches.
That's funny that you say that, because I see Minnie Mouse just with the polka dots and the way it looks like it's dressed. Neil was asking the name of the mulch. Just he was talking about pine bark nuggets, right?
Yeah, pine bark nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good mulch, and it's really cheap.
Yeah.
The only
like time that. I have found, I mean, that's what I normally get, and I like it because it does last a little bit longer because of the bigger, chunkier pieces, and also helps you with mechanical control of weeds because they're big, chunky pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what they're really great in is potted plants. You line them up just one layer, you know, of those, and you're shading out a whole lot of weed issues. I have heard that nurseries that started doing that had way less problems with having to hand pull or use a chemical on weeds in their pots. So the only time I have found that it was a mistake to use it is where I have put a wildflower garden, because you're relying on reseeding for the wildflower garden. So you want to use a much finer type of mulch, or even none, on a wildflower garden.
Where pine bark works nice with pots is you use the big chunks to line the very bottom so you don't lose the soil out the drain holes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you use the fines on the top as a mulch.
Mm-hmm.
And the fines provide a little nutrition and a layer to stop the
and pine is a renewable resource. It's a fast growing renewable resource. Why I mentioned don't use cypress mulch. It won't hurt your plants in any way if you happen to use cypress mulch. What we're referring to is Florida-friendly landscaping does not recommend the use of cypress mulch. Why, Bernie? Since you've claimed it to be political, it's really environmental.
Well, they just go down and wipe out the trees. There are places or companies that have promised not to make cypress mulch from any trees south of Highway 10, Interstate 10, which, you know, that's great, except you have no way to know if they really told the truth, and the other people don't. And almost all of the cypress mulch comes from wild cypress trees, and
there's no old hardwood trees left. If you think you're getting it for its ability to repel termites, because you're getting it, you know, the old cypress hardwood, those are gone. They're taking the young trees it's not not always a byproduct of a lumber industry. Literally, they go and they cut down these young trees and shred them down to put at the big box stores for us to buy as mulch. It's not sustainable, therefore we don't promote it.
Well, we did that with the cedar trees. Western Florida, from Sarasota north up in the Big Bend area, was covered with cedar trees. And, they pretty well came in, put in these mammoth cedar tree harvests, converted every tree that they could possibly find into pencils. And when there weren't any more trees, they abandoned the little communities they started.
Sure.
And moved on. And
Rosewood, which was a community with a very unfortunate history, but the reason it was called Rosewood, it was right next to Cedar Key. The rosewood that it was referring to was the cedar that they cut up and made, for pencils. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that the world needed that many pencils. But
a lot of kids, I don't know if they were number 2 pencils or not.
But it makes you realize if you had that many pencils, they had that many erasers. They made a lot of mistakes early on. And hopefully we'll learn something, but probably not.
Bill says thank you. And they have a ton of pollinators this year. That's fantastic. Lots of zinnias right next to the oleander. Maybe the zinnias attracted the wasp moth too. Nope. Just the oleander.
That is a one plant insect.
That is what, when you have an insect named after a plant, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to have that insect if you have that plant.
But
yeah.
But you need to check the plants. If you decide that you're going to keep them clean of the caterpillars, you need to check them at least every 3 days.
And that is also a very much consideration, because you want to have these pollinators. Therefore, the nasty pesticides that he mentioned are out. You can't use these pesticides. There's going to be drift. There's going to be all kind of, you're going to hurt the other critters in your garden. And that BT that I referred to, it only kills caterpillars. You want the butterflies, it's not going to say, oh, you're not an oleander caterpillar, I won't kill you. It doesn't work that way. So you might want to just consider your oleander as a sacrificial plant.
If you check the leaves on the oleanders, you'll find some leaves with hundreds of little dots on some leaves, little yellowish dots. You can pick that leaf off and do something with it to take it away from the plant, and you can keep the number of caterpillars lower that way. But they are a nightmare, and it's the only plant they attack. Oleanders are very, very, very poison.
Every part of them.
LD50 for oleander, which is the dosage that would kill 50% of the people.
So don't eat it.
It is 10 to 12 leaves.
But even touching it, people have issues with. Burning it, people have issues. Very much like poison ivy. Yeah.
Except it's fatal. So it doesn't really have any other pests. That's the one insect that gets it. Everything else tends to go in, take a bite, and die. But
just like the monarchs, why they go after milkweed, which is slightly toxic. More than slightly toxic. Why do they do it? So that they are toxic to their predators. Yeah. I'm sure this wasp moth does the same thing. That's, they eat that so that they are toxic to anything that might want to eat them. And they have whatever inside them that it doesn't kill them. So, we've only got 10 minutes left. Do we have any last minute questions here? Thank you, Teresa.
We had really good questions.
We did. I know. We always do. Last week we had a good time too. So if you wanted to participate in the micro irrigation class that was scheduled for yesterday, because Dr. Lester couldn't be there, I just didn't want to do it without him. It was so sad. He was nice. Now there are, some things I just, rely more on his strengths for. So, no big deal. We're going to do it this coming Wednesday instead. The 10th at 10 a.m. So that'll be on micro irrigation. It, like all of my classes, will be recorded. So if you miss it, you can watch it again on Facebook later that day. And it'll eventually end up on YouTube as well. You gonna make it cooler in here, Scott? Is that what you're doing?
No,
Oh, darn. Because it's a little warm.
that's the,
That'd be this one, right?
Okay. All right. So Neil has another question about white alyssum and horsemen are supposed to be good for bringing in pollinators and bringing in assassin bugs that kill pests. I can't promise that they'll bring in assassin bugs. I'm not sure, but they will bring in, the horsemen will bring in your bumblebees. Absolutely. Dotted horsemen, spotted bee balm is the other name for that. They're going to bring in native bees, bumblebees are native bees, but also little tiny bees. Anything that you bring in like that is for sure going to attract all kind of pollinators. I just got some bee balm from the Master Gardener nursery on Saturday. So haven't planted it yet, but
you know how to tell if they're assassin bugs, don't you? You handle them, and if it feels like they just drove a nail in your hand, and boy, they got the biggest little proboscis.
Yes, well, they have that wheel. They're also called a wheel bug. I'm pretty content not handling them.
Good thought.
Yes. I'm trying to remember when I was at the Master Gardener nursery on Saturday. Sean, if you're on here, you might remember a lady had a question about some plant that died, and we pretty much verified that she overwatered it. It was, it's pretty much a continual issue, loving your plants to death and giving it, it was an ornamental plant of some sort, but yeah, she was pretty sad because she said she was watering it pretty much every day.
I want to bring up one thing about potted plants that most people don't seem to realize. If you have a little potted something and you fertilize it every couple of months, eventually the fertilizer salts build up in the soil and the soil becomes poisonous to the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see little white crystals on top of the soil, that soil is no longer really safe for the plant. So the trick is either soak the plant and let the water really run through and flush all that out, or to repot them. But so many people will, I had this plant for 6 or 7 years, and then all at once it died, and I don't understand that I took such good care of it. Yeah, you killed it with kindness. So if you see the little salt crystals start forming in your potted plants,
Mm-hmm.
either repot them or totally flush out the pot and get rid of all that stuff. Just something to bring up.
And down here is a link in the family Reduviae, the assassin bugs. And this is just reminding you, it is a beneficial insect, and only 1% of insects are considered pests to humans.
They're not.
Cindy asks,
pests,
I guess she tried out a Florida avocado, one grown in Florida, and she's not sure how she feels about them. Do we have any suggestions on how to
Florida avocados are the big one?
She wants to know how to make it probably more tasty. Do you know anything about that?
Cut them in half, take the seed out, fill the cavity with small cooked shrimp, cover the whole thing with Thousand Island dressing, and eat the avocado and the shrimp and the Thousand Island dressing. It is a fantastic thing. a place out in California or in Las Vegas called Pepper Mill did that, and had that. It was wonderful. My wife and I do that probably 8-9 times a year. We love it.
Oh, okay. No, you do it at home. You don't go out to.
No, we don't go to Vegas that often, but.
Either our producer Teresa or Dr. Lester, the main star, is congratulating you on your good information on potted plants. So, Cindy says, yes, the big ones, the big avocados that you're referring to. Corey's popping on.
Yeah, if she's got the big avocados, try stuffing them, and also the crab. The artificial crab, KRAB crab.
Okay.
Cut that up, put it in the center. Use Thousand Island dressing. Use the cheapest, chunkiest Thousand Island dressing you can find. We used to buy Clover Valley from Dollar General. Best Thousand Island for this
really?
I found. So if you can get some of that, it works
There's
great.
no reason you can't. I mean,
I love
Generals,
it. Put bacon on top of it.
Yes,
You're
Corey.
absolutely right. Bacon makes everything better.
There you go. Corey says put bacon on top of it.
I love these things.
Yes. So, well, we are almost out of time. If we have maybe one more question, otherwise we might get to go. I thank you, Bernie, for always being here every Thursday. Bernie has been doing this for how long? We've been doing it since 2005.
17 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17 years.
And except when they didn't let him be here during the COVID times, he's been here every Thursday. This is the third building you've done this in.
Yeah.
And 2 horticulture agents and several directors, and Bernie is just a constant here. This episode brought to you by Dollar General. Yes.
I love it.
Haas avocados are the big ones. I like the small Mexican avocado taste better. So we always end up talking about how to cook things. Thank you, Cindy, for always joining us. Oh, and Neil loves shrimp. So thank you. And our producer, Teresa, says, we are so fortunate to have Bernie here. We really are, that I can just pop by and say, okay, Dr. Lester isn't going to be here. Let's have our special guest, Bernie. And he and I have always gotten along amazingly well. So they pull nutrients out of the soil and it builds up in the plant tissue. Then you can cut it and place it where you want. It's more of an accumulator.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, it is the oyster of the plant world, I guess.
Move it over there.
Yeah.
Let's take it out of here, grow something, and put it over there.
Oh, he's referring to Mexican sunflower.
I understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, it is 10:59. So thank you, everyone, very much. As far as I know, Dr. Lester will be back next week. But there's going to be times coming up. I don't remember the exact dates in the future. He has a conference he has to go to. So it'll be Bernie and I again. And we are having an actual class, a Wednesday morning class. September 21st will be Turf Talk with Bernie.
Oh, that's my specialty. I love
Yes.
turf. That I know about.
So.
All the rest of the stuff I just made up.
Don't tell them that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Lee has the Russell, and they're very tasty with salt and lime juice on toast. There you go. The avocado toast.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Teresa, for all your help. Thank you, Dr. Lester, if you're still around. And you will see probably both of us next week. Thank you and have a great week.